Welcome to this episode of The Good, the Bad and the Odd. Or should I call it The Good, the Bad and the Hammer? With your hosts Mark and Sam. Hi Sam.
Hey.
So this time we're covering our third film in our Hammer sort of trek through Hammer movies. Curse of Frankenstein. The first colour one, right? First colour one we've seen. And Hammer kind of splashed onto the scene with this one because no one was used to seeing horror films like this. You know, it kind of Hammer's blood sort of became infamous in its kind of whole style. So I mean, they got their money basically from the success of Quatermass Experiment, which gave them a bit of confidence and money to purchase the rights to Frankenstein. I don't know why they would have to purchase the rights, because presumably it was in the public domain, but they had to pay money to get the rights and decided to go with it. So this was the first in, I think, 7 movies they made about Frankenstein in the end. So quite a successful run of horror sort of sequels. And directed by Terence Fisher. We see Peter Cushing. This is like Peter Cushing's first starring role in a Hammer film. And we also have Christopher Lee as the monster. So this is kind of the first time Christopher Lee appears in Hammer. So lots of firsts in this one. And I have to say, Terence Fisher went on to direct some of the classic Hammers. What people think of as the classic Hammers. So Terence Fisher being around was really something too. We'd had some of the other Hammer people involved in the early films. For example, James Bernard did the music, but he also did the music for Quatermass. So he was kind of a known thing. But this was their first foray into colour, as I say. Nice and short, wasn't it?
Yeah. An hour and a half, so.
Yeah, well, not even that. 83 minutes. So when this came out, a lot of the critics really didn't like it. They called it vulgar, gross, a distortion of filmic values, poorly made, depressing, degrading, debasing. You got a feeling they weren't keen.
Nah.
But it looks kind of tame now, doesn't it, really? That's the thing. It's kind of tame. So, they adapted the story very freely, didn't we? Let's start on the downers, right? What didn't you like about it?
I didn't really enjoy the weird incesty subplot of
his cousin.
The cousin coming up and trying to get him to marry her.
Yeah, I think the thing is that was of its age. That's in the book, kind of.
Yeah, probably.
And around that time, kind of did marry second cousins. Wasn't that unusual? It's not so much done. Well, it isn't really done now, unless you're watching the Jeremy Kyle show or Jerry Springer. Should we give it an American translation? But that was a bit unusual. And I'll tell you one of the things I had wrong with it. We've got sort of bounce back and forth. I thought it was quite stagey, and it was a bit a drawing room drama in places, right?
Yeah.
So there was that kind of thing. What else didn't you like about it?
Christopher Lee's makeup could have used a bit of work.
You think it was a bit rough, do you?
It did look like he just sort of had porridge rubbed on his face.
Yeah, I thought it was all right. It was Universal were watching this like a red hot, like hawks. They said anything that infringes Al Frankenstein makeup, Boris Karloff, will sue, right? And Hammer weren't that big a studio to be able to stand up to that sort of thing. So they basically had to sidestep it and avoid it. Yeah. Would it surprise you to find out that both the scriptwriter and the director didn't watch the Universal Frankensteins?
Not that much, because it's just so different.
Yeah, it's so different, and probably it wouldn't have been so different if they'd have been in any way influenced. Perhaps it is quite there's no torch wielding mobs in this. Hammer couldn't afford that kind of stuff, right? Okay. Any other negatives before going to the positives?
Wasn't so much a fan of Paul's.
He was. That added to the drawing room drama side of things, didn't it? Rather than getting on with it. However, this was a film with quite a bit of narrative drive, despite that, I think. And I kind of like the fact that the dialogue was very sparing and only ever was there to kind of develop the plot. Right? It wasn't baggy. They weren't chatting about stuff. It was all about it. Well, what was the pluses for you?
Pluses. I did like that we saw Frankenstein testing his experiments a bit more.
Yeah,
like we saw him mess about with the dog, and where he like brought a dog back to life, and they. Admittedly, there was like 5 minutes of them just sort of staring at a bubbling pot for a while.
Yeah, there was a bit of that. Yeah, and he was like looking at eyes and hands and all sorts, wasn't he? And,
him going around like buying eyeballs was pretty cruel.
Yeah,
like,
and he's saying
cool and gruesome. So.
How much did we say? 10 each. 10 for the pair. Yeah, 10 for the pair. There's all that kind of stuff. It was kind of gory and bloody.
Yes, this is the first real instance of hammer blood, right?
Yeah, and probably most colour cinema didn't have any kind of blood in up to this point. It's very hard to think of any films at all, apart from maybe a little blood from a slight injury here or there, colour films where this kind of level of sort of gore and horror were portrayed in Technicolor, right? What did you... I mean, okay, for me, the real good stuff was actually Peter Cushing in this.
Peter Cushing was a really good actor in this.
Yeah, he was giving it all. Mind you, Peter Cushing almost always gives it his all, doesn't he? It's very rare to feel he's underperforming. Even when he's kind of underacting deliberately, he's still giving it his all. You can feel that intensity. And I think it was his energy that really propelled this film, actually. Because Christopher Lee wasn't given that much. He was a monstrous Hulk. Oh, and get this. When they were casting for Frankenstein, they looked at Christopher Lee, but they also looked at Bernard Bresslaw. You know, the tall guy in Carry On films?
Sort of.
He was also in Hulk the Slayer. He played the giant in Hulk the Slayer.
Yeah.
He was in the running for the monster, and he's like even bigger than Christopher Lee. But I'm kind of glad they gave it to Christopher Lee, though. Christopher Lee was kind of hulking, wasn't he?
He was taller than the others, but he's a really lanky guy, or was a really lanky guy.
Yeah.
So it kind of...
He was top-heavy looking, wasn't he? Like his shoulders were big and back, but his legs didn't look that big, and his bottom one.
The thing was, it was almost... His appearance was almost always comical because he either had bandages on, which made him look like the mummy instead, and he just looked really skinny, or he had this massive coat on where it just looked comical, like he was wearing a coat that was way too big for him, sort of thing. So.
Yeah, he looked a bit weird, didn't he? It was almost like they had to do him posing, but they were trying to avoid something looking anything like the Karloff version. However, they hadn't seen the car. Presumably, they'd seen pictures of it. They must have seen pictures of it, right? The whole Paul Kremp thing does feel a bit bolted on in that he's there to kind of show us his experiments. But when he starts going on about, I'm not helping you anymore, this is evil, but he hangs around the house, it's like, what a cheek.
Yeah.
And he's saying, I want to protect Elizabeth, but, I think he's got the hots for Elizabeth, right?
Yeah.
What do you think of the framing device, the priest visiting Frankenstein and him telling his story?
That was kind of cool because it reminded me of Shadow over Innsmouth.
Yes, I liked it too. And I liked the fact that Cushing was so manic when he was trying to tell the story and put his point across. And again, at the end of the film, he's kind of, when he's saying, Paul, tell them. And Paul kind of shows his true colours here because he basically lets because he's done all of this stuff as well. He lets the guy die, right?
Yeah.
Though, Victor's a bit, he let the maid get killed, so that was a bit much, wasn't it?
The maid was blackmailing him, so...
Yeah, that's true. Now, we start earlier, don't we, where it's pre-Peter Cushing with a younger Baron Frankenstein, played by Melvin Hayes. What do you think of that? Do you think it was a good match?
Yeah, it was okay.
Not good or bad, particularly.
Yeah, it was just sort of there.
It's unusual, this, because Melvin Hayes, I kind of know from more comedic kind of stuff, where he often plays characters who are a bit camp as well, because he's kind of slight and a little feminine looking, and as an actor, he was kind of playing those roles later on, so it kind of colours watching this a little. But I thought it was okay as a match, but I think it really picks up a lot when Cushing appears.
Yeah.
What do you think of the music?
The music, it was good in places, but at points it just seemed absent, really.
Yeah,
there were points where it really should have had some music. So
yeah. What do you think of the set designing?
the set was really cool. It was this nice big sort of gothic house exterior and sort of a bit more modern interior.
Yeah, I think Hammer was a little studio. It didn't have much money, but it got real lucky in that it found quite a good composer. It found an awesome set designer. It found some great stars in Cushing and Lee, and a few other actors that it reused. Some of its stock actors were pretty good. They play people like a barman and stuff like that, but they're pretty good, and you'll see them over and over when we start watching more Hammer films, and a few others. What do you think of Hazel Court as Elizabeth?
She was okay, but it was a bit of a. She didn't really have the punchiness of I can't remember her name in the Universal Frankenstein, but
yeah,
the fiance in the Universal Frankenstein just is way more memorable.
She is, yes, you're right there. The Hazel Court I felt was a bit stagey.
Yeah.
She wasn't a great actress. She's okay. She kind of looked the part. And I'll tell you what, her dresses and makeup and hair were pretty good, right? So again, we're getting Hammer's quite stylish, and is known to be stylish. And we're kind of seeing that.
She was Elizabeth in that too.
So again? Yeah, it was Elizabeth. They're all Elizabeth, I think, pretty much. And the lab's pretty cool. It's not big, but it's not like a Universal lab, is it? But it's pretty cool, and I like the fact it's got a thing of acid. It's got a massive bath of acid.
I do prefer the big Universal sort of sets where it's like because it makes like the Frankenstein's monster kind of hinges on the lightning, and that wasn't really that much of it in this. It was more of the chemicals he was being bathed in.
Yeah, it was all about the chemicals, wasn't it? And they first started with chemicals, then it got into sewing bits together.
Yeah,
and then he started going on about a brain. I need decent hands. This creature's hands are like gorillas. I need better hands. He goes and finds better hands, and then it's like now I've got to find a better brain. And he invites the finest brain in Europe to dinner, an old fella,
and then murders him. So.
Yeah, man, that stunt was amazing. That looked like a bloke had took a head out into a stone floor to me. It really did. I don't know how they did that because it looked real, didn't it?
Yeah.
It didn't look like a dummy, and it looked like a hard floor. So I don't know what they did to do that. Frank, they're very time-saving kind of devices here. There's not much. For example, the creature's in the lab, but he kind of escapes, and all we see is like the window open and broken, and he's ramping. They only have him rage around the countryside for about 5 minutes, right?
He only bumps into one group. So
I
hesitate to even call it a group because there's only two of them. So
it's an old blind man who he sort of does away with, which I think is, if you think about what happens with the blind man in the Universal and Young Frankenstein, which came later after this, of course, it's a different take on the monster, right? Monster's just murderous. He's not sympathetic whatsoever, is he?
Yeah. That's the thing. I kind of preferred the original monster, and this one's just not really selling.
Yeah, this is not a great monster in terms of how you empathise with it, with Karloff's, and even who was it, Chaney and Lugosi's playing the monster. Yeah. There was a bit of sympathy around it, but there wasn't in it. This monster was just a Hulk, really.
Yeah.
He tries to get this good brain, but Paul sticks his oar in after deciding not to work with him, and actually causes him to. It made me laugh. And then I had a bag with a jar in with the brain in, and they're struggling with it, and we hear the glass break, and the brain's still in the bag, and Frankenstein's going, "If you've damaged it," it's like, "Of course he's damaged it. You're joking." Brains are quite delicate.
It's a brain in a bag with shattered glass. Of course,
shake it up a bit. Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. Paul's being a dick again. Paul's not. I don't particularly like Paul in this because he's milk toast enough not to want to get involved, but he's not brave enough to just go either leave or go and tell the authorities. He just hangs around. It's kind of annoying. And I guess the woman's Elizabeth is the point of that, but it don't quite work. The script could have done with a slightly better polish. I didn't mind the script though. Having said that, I just felt it was a bit. This character doesn't feel like he's really doing anything. Paul, I'm talking about. Didn't feel that with Peter Cushing.
Yeah.
So that was good. There was also the maid, wasn't there, Justine, who, you know, as you said, was blackmailing him. She was kind of cute. She was like French or something, wasn't she? And she claims that he's got her pregnant. And they even make some jokes. At one point, he says, "You'll be serving Elizabeth just as well as you serve me." And she goes, "Not in the same way, I hope." That's funny. And it kind of, there's a lot of fade outs, and then we get a next scene which explains what happens in the fade out, right? Like, because we see the monster fall into the vat, and the next thing we know, Frankenstein's in a cell, and then they kind of mention he's there because of the murder of the maid, not because of the monster or anything like that. So there's some shortcuts.
There's a lot of shortcuts.
Yeah, so as I say, Terence Fisher directed this, and he went on to direct quite a lot of famous Hammer. He directed get this, I think 4 or 5 of the Frankenstein films in the end.
Wow.
He also directed Dracula, which we'll be watching in a couple of more episodes. The first Dracula film, The Mummy, Hound of the Baskervilles, which had Peter Cushing as Sherlock Holmes.
I'm looking at the list. Wow, this is quite a lot.
Yeah,
Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, that's the only Hammer Frankenstein film I haven't seen. So I'm kind of looking forward to getting to that. He directed Devil Rides Out, which is probably my favourite Hammer. Giving the game away, and a few others. Well, as we go through, his name will come up again and again and again, and he gets better and better as well. He certainly improves on his craft, and it only ever gets more stylish than this. Believe it or not, this is kind of the starting point for that whole thing. And again, this was a smash hit. This really took in the money, and again propelled Hammer to sort of new heights. Before this, just to give you a perspective, there were 3 Frankenstein films made in the silent era. There was, I think, 8. I think 8 Universal films in the end involving Frankenstein, and then this. So really, Frankenstein was really heavily associated with Universal before this movie. And it still kind of is, isn't it? When you think of Frankenstein, you tend to think of Universal. And because the monster had been destroyed in this, they couldn't. The monster was no longer the connective tissue as it was with Universal. So it turns out Frankenstein himself becomes the connective tissue, and instead of regretting what he did, he's driven to continue it.
What? He's the connective.
Yeah, Frankenstein.
He got executed.
Well, we'll see what happens the next film, right? You'll see how he gets out of it. Basically, Peter Cushing is in all but one of the Frankenstein movies in Hammer. Okay. So we're going to see him again, as we are when he plays Van Helsing in the Dracula movies. He's just he's ever present through Hammer. It's Peter Cushing. And probably engages way more than Christopher Lee, who always was butthurt about Dracula and stuff. He had his problems with Dracula, though he played some good roles in other, Rasputin, for example, and Duke de Richelieu in The Devil Rides Out. So he wasn't wholly antagonistic to Hammer. He just he didn't like the Dracula stuff. That was all, which was a shame. But it's still fun. He's still pretty good in them. So, any final thoughts on this one? Been a pretty short show, this one.
Yeah.
Shall I tell you a few more facts about it? How about that?
Okay.
Peter Cushing had actually worked with James Whale, who directed the Universal Frankenstein and Bride and Frankenstein. They'd actually worked together at one point. How about that? Apparently, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing's friendship sparked when Lee stormed into Cushing's dressing room about this movie saying, "I've got no lines." And Cushing says, "You're lucky, I've read the script."
Yeah.
So, yes. This held the record.
Such good friends.
Say again?
Those two are such good friends. Like, reading the stuff about them is amazing.
Yeah, they got on quite well. Apparently, this held the record for the most profitable British-produced, British-based movie for years. But can you believe that? How about that? really successful. This film was.
Yeah.
So it was, as I say, it went on to spur 6 sequels. So pretty cool. Apparently, Christopher Lee's makeup was done at the last minute. They were kind of trying to work out stuff and they couldn't work it out. So that might well explain it only looks half baked, as it were, because they really couldn't figure out what they really wanted to go with, which is a shame. Yeah. So that might explain that. There, Patrick Troughton, Patrick Troughton's the second Doctor Who. Was apparently in the first cut of this, but they cut his role. Wow. He was a mortuary attendant. He may have been the guy saying... That
sounds like it was pretty good.
Yeah, but he does come back in a later Dracula film. We do see him as Dracula's little assistant in one of the
Frankenstein, right?
No, Dracula.
Okay.
I mean Dracula. It would have been interesting to see Bernard Bresslaw doing this, but I'm kind of glad... Christopher Lee did it. And one other thing, apparently 2 guys, I can't remember their names, the 2 guys that went on to found Amicus Films, who were like Hammer's direct competitor, actually went to Hammer with a script for Frankenstein, and they got paid a nominal fee and kind of got ripped off. Which might have made them soar and go off and set up Amicus. So if Hammer had played ball a bit nicer, maybe they wouldn't have had that competition.
Yeah.
So it's our own fault, right? So there's a few things. It's set in Switzerland, which is... I can't remember if the book is. I think maybe it is, actually. But it's quite significantly different from the book, isn't it?
Yeah. I've not read the book.
But okay, yeah. Well, yeah, it is, and it's
quite different.
I mean, in the book, Frankenstein regretful about his creation, and that was nothing to do with it. A bit like they did with the Universal films, or some of them anyway. Whereas in this, the old Baron Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, he loves what he's doing. He don't want to give it up.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting difference, right? So yeah. Okay, I think we'll wind it up there. So, what would you give this out of 10?
I'd still give it like an 8. So
yeah, I think I'd agree with you. It's got 7.2 on IMDb. It's got some class. It suffers a bit when you compare it to some of the later Hammers, where they were much more the scripts were better polished and stuff like that. But it's got some real class about it. And it basically created the Hammer legend. We've already covered Quatermass. Quatermass gave them the funds, but the real brand of Hammer started with this film and came from this film. I'd say they kind of stuck with that formula for quite some time. Gothic, stylish, bloody. They kind of stuck with it. So you pretty much enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it.
Good. Next time we covered to Hammer, we're going to be going back to the black and white, which is Quatermass 2. So we'll be covering Quatermass 2. And then it's pretty much colour horror films all the way, unless we take one of the sidelines into... Hammer did a few movies in the 60s, which were quite interesting, which were kind of psychological horrors in the psycho mould. And there's a couple of those that are definitely worth seeing. There's one with Oliver Reed that's just amazing, for example, called Paranoiac. But mostly you and I will be sticking to the horror rather than the psychological thrillers. So next time it'll be Quatermass 2. And then after that, it'll be back to Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing in Dracula, which is really something, I have to tell you. I don't know, have you seen it?
Yeah, we did it for this podcast.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll be reprising that, I think. We'll reprise that. Give it another go. Okay, all right, let's wind it up there. So, bye from me.
Bye.
How